Okay, so we're going to talk about the different strategies that you can sort of start to employ in property. But before we could go into all of that, like I said, I want to find out more about who's on the call. Another thing I wanted to say before I go deep into a conversation is, why is this so important? So one of the key things you'll find out, and I don't know how deeply you guys are in property, is that property investing is one of the safest methods to create wealth. So, with the advent now of, say, social media and, social media marketing, there's been a big boom in that industry. So digital marketing and all of that. But as far as consistency, property investing has by far outranked every other asset class. So, a lot of people get into stocks, the stock market, which I have dabbled in, and I still do buy. I buy more long-term hold type of companies. But I would say that I've never been able to be comfortable to be able to put a lot of money into stocks, just because we all understand the way stocks work, right? Where, any piece of information can come out and just completely obliterate your stock price. That doesn't quite happen within property. So because property is an asset, the liquidity, obviously you can't sell it very quickly to get your cash. But what that means as well is that prices don't just crash. Do you understand? So it means it's not as susceptible to fluctuations in the market. It takes a while for you. So even as you've seen, the market is not in a great place at the moment. But what's happening with property investing is still booming. So everybody is a lot of gurus, if you listen to gurus, are saying that next year is when we'll start to see the fallout of what's happened this year in terms of property investing. And we're yet to see, because there are still so many investors. Every day I get a new investor calling to say, look, I'm looking to invest. What do you know about where to buy? And, so even if London gets saturated, there are other parts of the UK that people are diversifying into, okay? So it's not to say that the market can't just all of a sudden crash, but even if it was to crash, it's a slow process. It's not just going to go from, say, properties are 100,000 and then all of a sudden you'll be able to get fire sales of 20K. There are some parts of the UK possibly that could happen, but there are many areas where that's impossible, right? It'll take a while for it to really just flow through the system. So understanding that it's one of the safest methods. However, the key areas that combine to form your sort of property strategy all come from the time you have, the money you have, the knowledge you have, and the expertise you have, okay? So that's really how you are able to, say, deep dive into your property journey and build assets, right? So it really is about the time you have to go looking for property, searching for property. It's very time consuming, and you can outsource that. Of course, there are ways around that. And then money as well. A lot of people think that if you don't have any money, you can't get started in property. Nonsense. Like, you don't have to have, obviously you need money. One thing somebody said recently was, you need money to buy property, but it doesn't have to be your money, right? So it's just being aware of the fact that there are different structures that exist, especially in today's day and age, where people are able to do their due diligence a bit more. I think when things like when back in the day, when there wasn't a lot of information available, people were scared to invest in some of these different strategies that we're going to talk about. But now, because there's a lot more information, people are more knowledgeable, you find that there are more opportunities out there, okay? So the key thing is that you need to assess where you are on this roadmap, and that's why we're having this conversation. So before we go into sort of talking about your own situations, we want to talk generally and give that framework of how does property actually make money? How do you generate income from property, right? So you have capital appreciation. We all know, buy the property at 100K, hold it for 10 years. It's now 200K. Wow, you've made 100K on the property. So traditional way of holding, buying and holding. But there are other strategies that are quicker, where you can buy a property either discounted or add value to the property so that you can then retrieve your money from that property, so that you're not waiting for time to dictate the price. You've already strategized at the front end to extract value. So I'll talk a bit about that when I talk about the buy, refurbish, refinance model of property investing. Then we talk about cash flow. So that's ongoing rental through single lets, HMOs. HMOs are where you, houses of multiple occupancy, where you divide properties. Say you have a 5-bed house that would normally have been rented out to a five-bed family, or sorry, family. What you then do is split the rooms out into, split each of those rooms into individual tenancies and rent them out to individual tenants. So in that case, you've gotten a property that, and this strategy works pretty well in places like Liverpool, where you'll find that renting a property is quite bizarre, to be honest. You find that renting a property, say a 4 or 5 bed house, will cost you maybe £700 to rent the entire property. Then you'll find that to rent each of the individual rooms will be maybe £400. Do you understand? So that it makes, if you are an investor and you go into that kind of market, then you know that HMOs are definitely the way to go, because you get so much more return on your investment. And this goes not just for an investor with, if you have funds, I mean, an investor if you are doing a rent-to-rent strategy, which we're going to cover as well. Then real estate services. And this is where you're providing services to the sector. So we already know it's a very thriving sector. I know how many builders are making a lot of money, a lot of refurbishment contractors are making a lot of money just servicing. They don't even buy, you don't need to do that. They just make a lot of money from servicing the industry. So I'm not saying become a builder, but you can easily position yourself to contract and work between, say, a builder and somebody who actually has a need. So it's about positioning yourself within the industry and finding a niche, what I call a niche. And I talk about it a lot more in my 14 different strategies for no money down, which is not really no money down, it's more of almost no money down, because you always need money to get started. And where these are different strategies that you can get into, which are more about where you don't have to have more than, say, 1,000 to about 10,000 to get started, and you can develop a business. But of course, it's running a business. We'll talk about it. It's time consuming. So if you're a full-time employee, then you're very unlikely going to be able to make money from running a real estate services company if you don't have somebody that you've contracted to do the work for you. Or do you understand? So just understanding some of the limitations with the different strategies. Then the other thing is about real estate related services, where you have rent to rent, you have lease options, you have all these different strategies that are within real estate that you can, capitalize on. And again, some of them could be time consuming, some of them may not be, some of them could be a bit of capital required. Say rent to rent, you may need £5,000 to £10,000 getting started. Whereas with real estate services, you don't need more than just setting up like a small website, right? Where it's just about you going out and networking. So just to give a bit of context, I know I've sort of dived straight into content. Just to give a bit of context to those of you that don't know me, I'm Dolapo Oni, and I've been in property for 12 years now, but 10 years full time. So I started while I was working in the city. And then 2 years later, I decided, you know what? I've just about covered my expenses in terms of the amount of money I'm making from this. So I should be able to spend more time, because I was doing this part-time, escaping from work, going to view properties, doing all sorts of things to get it going. And I realized just from doing it for 2 years that, look, I have the flair for this and I'm going to go out. But I didn't just quit from the minute where I knew that I had the flair for it. I made sure that I demonstrated to myself that I would be able to sustain myself. So the worst thing to do is know that you have the flair and then jump off and go and just start doing your thing, right? You need a consistent source of income, and you don't want to be under pressure in your business. So some people have done it that way, and the pressure has made them go out and really just, go out in desperation. But I wouldn't suggest that. I would say work an exit plan from your job. It's kind of like a fire my boss type of plan, and steadily work at it. But you're going to have to be consistently doing it on average for 18 months to 2 years before you can then demonstrate that you can go on your own. So done all sorts of strategies, the ones I'm going to cover on this webinar, as well as, of course, mom and wife. So, I'm still juggling real life with that. So my post on Instagram today was about wife, mom, boss, and how you're constantly juggling the whole thing, right? And trying to make it work. But, I definitely have a passion for all three. So, it's just making sure that I get everything all in balance, right? And so for those of you that are, maybe you already have a family, it's to let you know that these things can be done. It does require sacrifice. There's no easy way to do this. But if you are consistent, you know your strategies, you work hard at it, you can build something from it. Okay? So, I run the Property Mom podcast, for those of you that know. And then I have Property Kept Simple, which I will talk about at the back end of this webinar, which is just a platform that I've created just to talk to engage more with people who want to get into property and want, say, more step-by-step guidance on the journey. And then Citygate Property is the name of the company, and recently rebranded to Citygate Homes as well. So types of projects I've worked on, all sorts, going from developments, extensions, lofts, simple refurbs. And one of the reasons why I call the company, the training company, Property Kept Simple, is because honestly, you don't have to scale to sort of be a large scale developer to be comfortable or successful. There are many ways you can just build something that works for you and you're comfortably sits in with your life. However, if you want to be a big time property mogul, doing developments, by all means, there's so many ways you can find yourself in that direction through training, through working hard at it, and through building your contacts and network for sure. So, sorry, just let me miss it. Okay, good. So the point I was making is about the opportunity that we all have, that everyone on this call, as long as you have, so for me, I always say the passion is important. If you don't have the passion, and I compare passion to if you meet someone, you kind of like the person, he's a nice guy, whatever. But then as you get to know the person, you start to fall more and more in love with the person, and then the passion comes and whatever. I say that the property journey too can be like that. And that you like property, but over time, as you find the way, you find your strategies and you find yourself in it, then you can really become passionate about it. So you don't need to start off, some people say, oh, but I'm not really passionate about it. I say it will come, but what happens is you have to first develop a flair in it, and you have to develop a consistency in it. So I've been working at it consistently for the past how many years? And so that's why I have the results that I have now. But when you start out, it will be hard. There's no doubt. We've almost assessed that it takes 6 months for the average person to land their first property. And it doesn't matter whether you have cash or you don't. With cash, sometimes it's easier. But to find a good investment property that you're comfortable with can take 6 months. So you have to be comfortable with the grind that goes along with doing that. The number of calls to estate agents that frustrate you. I've been on all sorts of auctions this year. And of course, this year has been particularly difficult, where there's just properties that there's value in just go completely out of the market price, and you're like, why is anybody paying this amount for this property when you can easily go on the market and find something? So the market is in a very strange place at the moment. But regardless of all of that, the point is action, consistency, tenacity. And the reason why tenacity is because you will come against pushback, you will come against obstacles, you will come against estate agents and different people in the business that would just frustrate you. And it's just about overcoming it and having that inner strength to overcome and not back down, right? And I'll show you that, when we're talking about the property roadmap, and I talk about the first phase that you are in, you find that that's one of, I think in that phase, about maybe 90% of people drop off because it just gets tiring and stressful, and you think, what, this is not going to work. But it's actually the few that then persevere that then you have the success stories. Okay, so now we talk about how you make the fundamental principle. I talked about the 4 ways you can earn income from property, but it's understanding that property is the asset, and it's the one sort of sitting in the middle of which you can own property and earn income from it. You can control the property, that's through the strategies that are more rent to rent, lease options, controlling strategies, or you can provide services to the property. And either way, you will earn income from. And of course, the best way is if you have a combination of strategies. So it's not in my slides, but one thing that I say is you first find one strategy that works for you, and then you build up with a second one that is sort of like, it ties in, but it's a related strategy. So I'll give an example. If you decide I'm going to go into flipping, I have some money, I want to buy a small property, do it up, refurbish it, put it back on the market, sell. Then a secondary strategy you could develop that runs alongside is where you provide refurbishment services to other clients, other investors who want to refurbish their properties in the location in which in the patch in which you invest in, or generally, if you're in a city, for instance. So you want to have these sort of related strategies that bring in income, because you have your core strategy as your main income generating business, but you have these side businesses that bring in additional income. And that's really for those that want to go into it full time or want to build something on the side from property. Okay, so the first stage that we want to go through, and this is where I'm going to interact with you guys a bit, is to let me know in the chat time, money, knowledge, experience. And it could be a combination of either. What is your obstacle? So we want to, number one, identify the obstacle. Because like I said, in property, there's always a strategy to get around the obstacle. So money, time, experience, knowledge. So if you can put in the chat box, number one, if it's money, of course, 2, time, 3, knowledge, 4, experience. And you can put, 1 and 2 or 1 and 4, whatever it is that sort of is your own sort of scenario. And then we can talk to it as we go through. Okay, great. 1. So we have money, we have 3 and 4, knowledge and expertise, 3 and 4, knowledge and expertise, 3, knowledge, yeah, and then 1 and 2. Okay, so good mix where you have people that have knowledge, some people, so knowledge, how to find a specific property that's worth investing in. Yes, I totally get that, because that's about deal analysis and understanding how you work through a deal and what makes sense. Because anybody can, with money, like I say, anybody with money can just go and buy a property, but is it a good investment property? And even I, from my own journey, realized that there were ways I could have optimized my funds better at the beginning that I didn't know about, because then access to training was quite difficult and super expensive as well. So I just thought, well, money to go and do the training, I might as well just go and buy the house. Like it was quite a lot, because a lot of these things were closely guarded secrets, right? And they were things that only a few people sort of had access to it. And then if you were sort of lucky. So one of such strategies that I came about was actually completely by luck, in that a partner and I, that's a business partner, and I went to go view a property, and we heard someone else talking about what they were going to do at the property. And this is the thing about going for some of these auction viewings, is that you can actually just overhear things. And that was a complete game changer for us, because when we came out, we were like, oh my God, you can do that. So it was like, you can do that. And so all this time we'd be buying properties, we didn't know we could, yeah. So it's funny how, you just, and when they say you don't know what you don't know, it's an annoying thing to say, but it's true, in that if you don't know the strategy, you just don't know it. You will just be walking around blind. So 1 and 4, and then 3, 2. Yeah. So quite a good, like spread, of the same challenges. It's always money, time, and even if you work around it, they're still coming up at different points. So at a point in your life, you may have time, but then a different point in your life may come where you don't actually have time. So you have to make sure that whatever strategy you have, also you've thought long-term in terms of, if this stops, if this primary asset I have, which is time, if somehow, I get pregnant, for example, and I don't have that time anymore, then what is my fallback plan? So, I say throughout your property journey, you always need to be looking at backup plans, scenario testing. And, this year is a fantastic year of how making sure that you have backup options, is what will really save your business. Because, you always want to be constantly thinking about, okay, I have this strategy that I employ, this is my primary strategy, but what other strategies do I need to be kind of keeping in the back burner that are going to support my property business, so that I can diversify. I read somewhere that for people that are really, really wealthy, they have 7 separate sources of income. And it doesn't mean that they're all from different industries. They could all be from the same industry, where you have property investing as your primary, you have what I said, where you have like a refurbishment company, you have some kind of crowdfunding business that, gets funds and invests for you. Do you understand? So right there, I've just told you 3 different related property strategies, but that you could develop alongside. Okay,